SEO in 2026, it really does mean becoming the connective tissue between product, AI governance, and content credibility. I'm Keith Goode, and this is SEO in 2026.
Keith, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
In 2026, the SEO who secures buy-in isn't selling rankings. They're selling resilience.
Resilience. So resilience to what?
So more specifically, it's organizational resilience. One of the challenges that you will face as an in-house SEO and oftentimes as a consultant for companies is getting buy-in for the things that you're recommending for the sites. And I think I've covered this with you before several times. The problem evolves just like our industry evolves. And as AI has become more prominent, as discussions around this new thing that people are trying to make happen, geo, have evolved, we have to really evolve our understanding of how to sell what we offer as SEOs to an organization that is potentially thinking about replacing everything with automation and AI. So buy-in becomes a lot more crucial now than it probably has ever been. And it's how we stay employed, but it's also how we protect the organizations from poor decisions, such as replacing the entire team with AI.
Is this how people in agencies should sell their services, as well as SEOs working internally within organizations? They should all talk to stakeholders using the resilience language. And I guess if so, what is the resilience language?
One of the things, yes, I'll answer your question with, first of all, a yes. Agencies should be concerned about this as well, because you are going to be talking to organizations that are either a little bit too gung-ho about going all in for some of the AI, LLM efforts, or you have others that are just terrified about what it presents as a challenge for their organization and their existence overall. The fact of the matter is we see clicks diminishing thanks to AI overviews. Google is making good on its promise to become an answer engine, not just a search engine per se. And we've seen situations where some publishers are seeing reported drops of around 50% in referral traffic from organic. At the same time, you have executives who are obsessed with automation. I think there are some companies out there that would, if they could outsource the CEO to AI, they probably would, just to make more money. So we have these organizations that are rushing to replace humans with AI, often at a cost play rather than a quality play, and then they suffer for it. We've seen surveys in which some, I think it was something like 55% of companies that have replaced large swaths of their organization with AI now regret the mass layoffs. And they're having to, rehire folks to sort of fix problems. And, some people have actually abandoned, I want to say it was right around, I think Morning Brew reported something like 42% have abandoned their generative AI pilots in 2025. So as SEOs, we have to be these sober voices in the room around these technological advancements. Agencies can help with that as well. Consultants can help with this as well.
So what does that sober voice sound like? Are we simply saying that that human SEOs are necessary because of X? And if so, what is X?
Yeah, the sober voice is basically helping organizations bridge AI with human-led governance, first and foremost. Obviously AI adds value, or we wouldn't be considering it, and organizations wouldn't be considering it. And I think you can't really afford to be a Luddite in this situation where you're saying that, no, let's ignore this advancement altogether and stick with what we've been doing. But the sober voice also basically is helping organizations use what I've talked with you about before, the LOE, LOI, level of effort, level of impact matrix, to sort of figure out, okay, what can we implement that makes sense in this advanced technology? What can we stick with that is sort of what is considered classic or traditional SEO? What can we do to bridge the gap between those two efforts? And, how do we prioritize that based on impact? It's also a matter of that Sober Voice rebranding SEO as a strategic portion of infrastructure, not just a tactic. And this is something we should have been doing for the past, I don't know, 2 decades at this point. We are a crucial part of the strategic infrastructure of any organization. And some people are selling it as a tactic for just, keywords and links and those types of things. So these types of challenges that people might be facing are often the results of not approaching executives with a strategic mindset.
So you talked about accepting, I guess, that certain activities could be done by AI, but emphasizing the importance of governance by individuals. Are you able to define what tasks should definitely be done by AI and what tasks should definitely be done by an individual from a strategic perspective? Or is the line between those two areas moving too quickly and it's challenging to actually pinpoint exactly which one should do what?
Yeah, I've definitely embraced AI personally for myself for several of those. So one is from a branding and strategic standpoint. I think AI is wonderful. ChatGPT, for example, is wonderful for sitting down and having a conversation about, here are our challenges as a brand. What have you seen other organizations do? What have you seen in documentation that can help us come to a better solution? As a human, you have an obligation to listen to what ChatGPT says and sanity check it and make sure it makes sense before you hand that strategy deck over to an executive. And ChatGPT is more than happy to go, this is what you should do. Would you like for me to put this in a PowerPoint presentation? And some people might just be inclined to go, all right, I'm just going to send that over to the executive. And that's just foolishness for the most part. But at the same time, beyond the strategy as it relates to overall organizational approaches to brand, it can be used for content planning. It can be used for ideation, and it can actually be used to help execute on some of the creation of the content that you're trying to build. But the governance comes into play where you are sanity checking that, and you're comparing what has been produced against your organizational standards as well as brand standards as well. It's a real challenge for us as people living in a time when we could conceivably hand over a lot of these things directly to the machines, and not let that laziness take over and not use our own logic to determine what is best for the organization. Yes, our jobs could easily be replaced if we took that approach, but we shouldn't take that approach.
You say that to secure your SEO budget, your roadmap spots, and your seat at the table, stop speaking in SERPs and start speaking in systems. What are systems?
This goes back to what I refer to as the strategic portion of the infrastructure of an organization as well as a website itself. If you review any of the information coming out around so-called geo or AI optimization as it relates to the technical aspects of it, it sounds an awful lot like SEO. It sounds really very much like an SEO, classic technical SEO specifically. So the systems that we are looking to optimize are not different from what we've optimized before. We just have to take a different approach on how we curate what we want these LLMs to consume, if we can control that. And then also how we can continue to optimize to rank really well in the search engines. Why? Because the LLMs are using those search engines. They're going back around. If you ask for some recent information about something, what does it do? It goes and it looks at the search engines. It looks at the information that it has there. So yeah, I would say that those systems aren't terribly different from what we've had to optimize before and provide strategic value from, but we just have to take a different mindset from it. So
you also say that as clicks shrink and AI answers expand, it's not just about traffic, it's about the connective tissue between marketing products and AI governance. So what does an SEO need to do to establish themselves as a system thinker? And how has the SEO role changed? Or at least perhaps a better question is, who did the system thinking role beforehand? And why is the SEO the right role to take that ahead?
Great question. Wonderful question. SEO goes beyond just developing roadmaps and worrying about taxonomy and, schema, et cetera. those types of things. We have to become, and we should have been, as I've said before, time and time again, a cross-functional stakeholder for folks. And I think I'm in a really good position right now as an SEO product manager because I can look at the overall strategic efforts of the product organization to build out the product and think about it in a way that acts as a connective tissue between not just what we want to accomplish for the users, but what will work very well within the search engines and then also within LLMs and other AI learning models out there. It's a matter of not only being cross-functional in that respect, but then also working with the legal teams and coming up with some level of like organizational governance around the use of AI, AI ethics, as you might think of it as, how we might integrate it in with customer service without necessarily replacing all the customer service folks. I'm thinking of Klarna, the company Klarna, for example, that replaced all of their customer service folks with AI. And then with this year alone, they're really desperate to hire, I think, somewhere around 700 folks to come back in. So really, honestly, we are sort of the nexus point for this change within organizations. Not a lot of other people within the organizations are even thinking at the level of specificity that SEOs are. And so we have to think about, all of these functions within an organization as it relates to AI and provide guidance for it. That helps us get buy-in as individuals. It helps us sort of solidify the importance of our roles within the organizations, and it can help us keep our jobs for the most part.
It almost reminds me of the skills that were required for early digital marketing manager type jobs, because you started off in maybe internet marketing, being a little bit entrepreneurial, building your own web pages, figuring out actually how to get revenue from it, developing SEO skills from that, and then maybe the first in the mid 2000s digital marketing manager type jobs evolved, and then you had to be an evangelist for what digital marketing could do to an organization, and you had to teach traditional marketers how to use new technology at the time and how that could drive a lot of traffic and revenue for companies. So it's going back to those sorts of skill sets by the look of it.
Yeah, it really is. Again, these are skill sets that we should have been developing overall, not just in the age of AI, but since the beginning of digital marketing in general. We're kind of in the best position to do that because we think deeply about not just systems and optimizations, but also about users, as we should have been, because Google has said, if you are providing user value, we will rank you, basically. If you're answering their needs effectively, you're going to probably rank better in that sense. So we have sort of been that Renaissance man, as it were, of organizations, because we've been both technical as well as human-centric.
I guess a system thinker comes a little bit more naturally to someone that's got a lot of experience. What's the path to take for someone that's just getting started in the industry? Because there's so much being taken over by AI. So how do you become a system thinker if you're maybe siloed or stuck in a particular SEO role and your role is in danger of being taken over by AI?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I feel bad for the newer folks in the industry because of that. I would say at the same time, we are the best industry to hop into and learn how to navigate your career going forward in the age of AI. We have so many folks in our industry that are just giving information away. You don't really get that from many other industries in the world where people are saying, I have expertise in this and I'm willing to teach you how to do exactly what I do. I think of Aleda Solis, for example, perfect example of someone who is doing quite well in the industry overall, but has turned around and has outstretched her hand to bring people up behind her with her learning tools. I think of other technical SEOs out there, Christina Azarenko, for example, who is constantly pushing out technical SEO information for folks to learn. If you want to become a system thinker, I think you really do need to take a deep dive into technical SEO. And you should learn about what it takes to build a website, You don't necessarily need to learn JavaScript or Python or anything like that, or PHP, but learn about how sites are built and what it takes to execute rendering of a site to a user, and how that sort of reflects on how the bots interact with your websites as well. The more you can learn about the technology that you're optimizing, the better situated you are to become that central hub of systems understanding. We've had so many challenges as SEOs throughout the past few decades, for that matter, where I think there's a perpetual or a perennial voice that pops up and says SEO is dead. You've heard that many times, I'm sure, as well, David, where, I don't know, 15 or 20 articles a year come out saying SEO is dead.
Sure.
And it never proves to be true. We are just faced with new challenges. And the new challenges, for those of us who've been in it for a while, don't really faze us very much, because we adapt, we evolve, we become knowledgeable about this supposed challenge that we're facing. And AI is no different from that.
Keith, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
SEO in 2026, it really does mean becoming the connective tissue between product, AI governance, and content credibility.
Keith Goode is an SEO product manager at the Permanente Medical Group. Find out more over at goodesearch.com. Keith, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
You got it. Happy to be here.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at SEOin2026.com.